What's up guys, it's John Carden for Primal Performance Coaching, and this week on Strength Weekly we're going to talk about mindset. Now, not quite mindset, goal setting and all that like positivity stuff. I'm going to talk about something different. Now, the mindset behind an elite level lifter. Now, I have some insight into it because I was there briefly, but I was there and I was able to rise up in the sport very relatively quickly, which is pretty rare when you're in the heavyweight division, because heavyweight division generally takes a very long time to rise up. Certain lifts I did extremely well and I rose up very quickly, but it took a little bit of time before I was like successful on the total level. But for squat I was definitely there very quickly. Deadlifting as well, and then bench press, which held my total back, developed over time. Now let's talk about the mindset here. So elite level lifters, there's something different in them. It's all different ways, but basically what you're trying to do, and Stu McGill touches on this a lot in some of the research that he does, is neural drive. So in order to lift as much weight as possible, you need a high level of neural drive. A high level of neural drive. Now what this means is basically is how hard the nervous system drives to lift up some weight. So if you had if you were a woman and say your kid was getting, or a man, that's not a good example. Let's say you're a kid, you're a parent, and your kid is trapped underneath the car. Now, you've seen parents that they may not look super strong at all, but they literally rip off their arm, picking this car up off of their kid, because they're in such a crazed, raised state that they can do that. That they're in just such an emotionally driven, angered, scared, worried, they just want to get that car off their kid. They're gonna do whatever the fuck it takes. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. So in powerlifting, that's where that neural drive component comes in. So basically, in our body, we have a bunch of different processes and different neurological triggers that will prevent us from reaching past, let's say, 70-80% of our physiological maximal strength. Now, if you want to power lift, your goal is to use 100%, because if you can use 100% of it, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be able to lift something pretty fucking heavy. And you're probably going to be a pretty high level lifter. If you can get into that more often, if you learn how to harness your neural drive and you learn how to build it up. And a lot of that is psychological, right? So it comes from focus, it comes from a very locked in, and a lot of times, a lot of lifters find that comes from a dark place. And I found that to be true for myself. So I have been through a lot of very painful shit as a kid. There was a lot of physical and sexual abuse, as well as emotional abuse and bullying. So I was able to use that as a way to fuel, especially in the squat, because I was extremely good at the squat. That's another thing, you have to be extremely good at that lift to be able to really harness. So I was very technically efficient at squatting, very technically efficient at deadlifting, so I could just let that rage go and I could just unleash. And when I unleashed, I could let out, I could push weights that and I could get up in meets, or I could get up in competitions when I'm getting close to competition. I could push weights that physically, I don't think I should have been able to do. But I could do it, because psychologically I would go to a place, a very deep, dark place. I would sit there and I would get so angry that I literally wanted to kill people. If people would have gotten in the way of me when I was lifting at the time, I probably would have killed you. And I'm a nice guy. I'm a very nice guy. I'm a very chill guy. I'm a very quiet guy. And in powerlifting, it was very much that way. But you could tell, when I was walking up to the bar, when I was in a meet getting ready, I was in the fucking mood to kill. And I found there has to be a level of focus. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to that kind of a fucked up, scary place. But if that's not where you're going to go, you need to go to a very heightenedly focused, numb, and locked in state. So Russian, European lifters are less emotional lifters, but if you watch them, they're extremely focused. They're extremely locked in. They go to a place where their mind is completely blank. You cannot be distracted doing this shit. You need to be able to lock in into something that is completely focused, completely in control, and push. Now, a lot of lifters nowadays are very soft. They're of a different breed, and that's fine. I don't think that from a positive standpoint in your life, going to the places that I went to and reliving it the way that I did to fuel anger, to fuel performance, may not have been the healthiest choice, right? Nor do I think it's something that you have to do. But being able to discipline your mind and go into a deeper locked in state is definitely going to give you better results. And I find a lot of lifters, they're not focused enough. And I have this discussion, I've been really working on this with a lot of my lifters, is focus enough, like, Aeon, what is the long-term objective? How is this going to help me get there? Okay, I have a session today. Fuck Instagram, fuck the cell phone, I'm going to fucking train. Ooh, someone talked to me on my cell phone. No, record your videos. If you have to use a camera, set up a tripod and just sit it there and let it record. Hit record every time. And don't worry about, oh, I'm going to post this later. None of that shit. You touch that shit later. Maybe you do it once a week, twice a week. But you do not touch that shit during the workout. You stay 100% focused and locked in on what it is you're doing. Think about the lift. Think about how to execute the lift. Kurt Kowalski, in my opinion, one of the greatest lifters of all time. Say what the fuck you want. But in my opinion, bar down, one of the greatest lifters of all time, next to Eddie Cohen, said this: don't fuck up for like a minute. That's the only goal when you're training in powerlifting or even competing. The lift takes about 20 seconds. Don't fuck up for 20 seconds. Keep your head right, focus on those 20 seconds, and then you can go fuck off and do what you want. But focus on that immediate 20 seconds. If you can do that, you can be an incredibly successful lifter, and you don't have to be a rage monster. Now, I found what I could switch it on and off. And you just go to that place for that like minute, and then you're out. And you're just calm, you're peaceful, and you're at peace. And it allowed me to actually like work through that shit. But for a lot of people, that may not be something that they want to do. And I'm not saying you have to go through trauma to be an elite level lifter. But what people need to understand is this is a singularly focused sport. The goal of the sport is to lift weight up and down as much weight as possible. There is no... Form matters and efficiency matters, but there is no score for how good it looks. Right? So, and basically, when you really think about it, what are you trying to do? You're trying to lift as much weight as possible. And now we know that there's a barrier there. And that barrier is neurological, but also psychological. Now, so you should really be not only just focusing on hypertrophy and muscle growth and movement efficiency. Now we realize that there's two more other dimensions that we need to focus on, is increasing our neural drive. So looking at things that we can do so added stability is going to increase neural drive. Added grip strength is going to be huge for neural drive. So those two things, we got to work on our stability and our grip strength. Stability specific to what we're doing as well. And then you need to look at the psychological aspect. So how focused are you? What are the distractions? Locking in, learning what approach you need to take in order to lift as much as possible and get into that heightened mode where you're starting to tap into like 85, 90%, maybe 100% of your absolute strength potential. Maybe you tap into 100% one or two times in your career. But if you can do that, and especially if you've done it over a long period of time, you might be able to head an all-time record. You might be able to set some massive numbers that you've never thought you were capable of. You might be able to pull out. That's why you see some guys pull out some massive deadlifts that they've never done in competition, at like world championships and stuff like that, because they've been training for so long. They've learned how to like master and manipulate that neural drive. They've learned how to master and manipulate the psychology that goes into creating that bigger lift, and then all of a sudden it just pops off. It's just bang, and you see them pull like an 800-pound pull when maybe in training they only do 700, and it's just they win that world championship. And then you try to get them, they try to replicate that lift, any time in their career, and they just can't do it. So that's where that comes in. So for anyone that's looking to increase strength and like really get into elite level powerlifting, that's a rabbit hole you want to start to dive into. And I think I'm actually going to start diving into it a little bit more, as I have some methods on how I dive into it. I just don't really discuss it. So I'm going to really talk about like the training aspect of the neurologically, the neural drive, and how to increase that for powerlifting specifically. So if you guys like this type of video, like, share, comment, subscribe down below if you're looking at this on YouTube. Other than that, I'll see you guys